Perfect. Well, thanks for having me. My name is Tom Bendt. I'm the athletic director at Aloha High School in Beaverton, Oregon. I've been out here for about 16 years in the school, former head basketball coach and social studies teacher. And the last 7 years, I've been the athletic director. We're a school at about 1,800 kids in Beaverton, Oregon. We have 6 comprehensive high schools that sort of range between 1,500 and 2,500 kids. So we are in the biggest classification out in Oregon. And again, this is a crazy year to be an athletic director, but it's also been challenging and a lot of fun in some ways.
Well, and I kind of did the basketball 80 thing at the same time too, and it's like, okay, this is easy, right? No, it's not. But it's even more difficult now because, as we were mentioning off the air, how are you when you're able to get back? Well, actually, let's start with that. Where are you with where you can perform and how you can practice and things of that nature?
Yeah, that's a great question. Every state obviously has done it differently. We sort of closed everything down this fall, and we're on plan D, E, or F somewhere as far as what's going to happen. Right now in Oregon, we are on what we call season one, where we get to practice with our kids 90-minute increments 2 or 3 times a week. But it's also restricted on numbers of kids. So we actually cannot be indoors right now. So all of our activities have to be outside. And it is January and it is the Portland area. So
Right.
we're not typically cold, but it's raining, so it's not every day is perfect, needless to say. And then in February, our fall sports are going to start, and then followed by our spring sports. And then we're putting our winter sports at the end because right now, wrestling and basketball, we can't play in this state. Those are off limits because of the high contact.
Right. So we're looking at when we get back, you're starting with volleyball, soccer, those things, right? So what how does it play out with kids who are playing multiple sports? I mean, they're just going to have compressed seasons with no practices, or
No, it's a great question. What they've done, and this is meeting with some opposition a little bit, so they're going to basically get 1 week of practice, and then we're into contests for 5 weeks, and then the last week they're calling it a culminating week, which could be league tournaments, it could be a regional thing, it could be just playing a couple more games for kids. We're trying to just get as many, kind of play dates from that perspective for kids who especially lost the spring last year to get to
right?
compete. So yeah, we're trying to do the best we can, and we're trying to sell our coaches on, like, you know what, this year is so different. There's no league championships, there's no state championships. Let's get out there with our kids and do the right thing by kids.
What are you looking at as far as scheduling? Are there games? I know that there are rivalry games. There are games against crosstown schools. Are those out the window? You just schedule who you can schedule?
We're scheduling regionally in our state. So in the Portland metro area, there's a lot of schools in our area. So we're kind of staying in that bubble. But yeah, we're trying to play in our leagues or our conferences like we normally do, and then we'll step outside of that a little bit to get the games that we need to get or that we can play during the time frame.
And as far as scheduling officials and whatnot, how crazy does that get?
Well, the craziness is just beginning because we're starting to do our official state scheduling, and a lot of officials, I don't know how it is for you, but they're older folks, and a
Right,
lot of them are opting out, like some other people are, because they're afraid of COVID. And if
right.
I'm 60 years old, and do I want to be running up and down the field with a bunch of kids? So that it'll be a concern for sure.
Well, I spoke with a gentleman in Georgia with the Georgia Athletic Officials Association. I think I've got that in the right order. And their concern has been not just for COVID, but and I think nationwide we have the same concern. Is most officials are older, and how do we recruit younger officials? And so we're kind of helping them with that progress. But it's kind of tough because we're starting out of the blue saying, okay, under 30, you can be an official tomorrow. You still have to go get the experience and go through all the classes and everything. But I think it's important for, as athletic directors, to say, we need to get new blood in here as well.
Right. And that's a struggle nationwide. I mean, we have the same thing. We've got different campaigns through our OSAA to how do we recruit officials? How do we get them to want to do it? And part of it is, it's hard because I think fans and parents have gotten harder on
Right,
officials. So that doesn't look really attractive to me to come ref one of your basketball games for $50 and get yelled at for 2 hours. Right.
right,
So we've
right.
also got to educate, I think, our parents and fans, like, if we want to keep having games, we're going to have to think differently in how we treat those people.
And I know as a coach, I ran into the problem of he's been in a lane for 5 seconds. He's been in a lane for 10 seconds. He's been in a lane for an hour and a half. It's like, they know, just let it, but it's hard to get out of that, especially when the guy's 6'10" and your center's 5'11", and you like get him out of the lane so I can get something going on here. So,
Well,
but yeah, but it's. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, I was just going to say one story on that. It's a funny one like that perspective. And I was a basketball coach for 21 years. And I remember early on in my career, I was on the official, and the guy ran by me and said, and I'm about 25 years old at this point in time. And he goes, you know what? You keep yelling at me. You're not coaching your team. Maybe you ought to
Right.
rethink what you're doing. And of course,
Yeah.
as a 25-year-old, I'm like, don't tell me what to do.
Right.
But in retrospect, I'm like, yeah, but that was one of the wisest things I've heard. Like, if you're just yelling at the officials, you aren't coaching your
What are
kids.
you
So
doing?
it's good.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had something similar, but we were playing out of our area in a different region of Ohio, and it was a JV game, and the team was coming down, and basically every crossover dribble started here and went that way, and every change of direction, I'm like they're carrying the ball, and the guy looked at him and was like, they're not gaining an advantage. I said, they're up by 27. I think they're gaining an advantage, but the point was, this is how we call it here. I'm not going to change what we do. Focus on your part. So, and that's something I think is very important for us to understand in all sports. And the decorum, and what we mentioned in our meeting with the gentleman from Georgia, was the decorum we want in a classroom is the decorum we should demand at a sporting event.
Well, and coaches are very invested in what they do, and I was very passionate. I'm sure you were too. But there is a point, we are role models for kids,
Right.
and how we act is what they're going to follow. Whether you tell kids, "Hey, I'm the coach. That's my job to yell at
Right.
officials," that's not the way it works in the real world. We model and we see the behavior and we follow through on that, unfortunately.
But like you said, as a 25-year-old coach, you didn't do that as a 35-year-old coach.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, I got better at it.
I was able to hide it better, right? But the same thing you teach your kids. You're not a finished product right now.
Mm-hmm.
You will be long after you leave here, hopefully at some point, but you need to learn how to do things. And I think that's the one thing that we as administrators tend to want to push towards people, but they don't want to hear it because the fans and the parents are demanding wins and losses.
Right.
And sometimes that's not always the most important thing. It's nice to win a state championship, don't get me wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also nice to say, hey, your kids call you back in 10 years and go, Coach, I'm in town. I'd really love to see you.
Well, and we've done a lot at our school in the last, I guess, years that I've been an AD, as far as educating our coaches and talking about leadership and character development for our kids. And like you said, at the end of the day, winning is very important. However, what kind of people they turn out to be is
Right.
what the kind of rewards in coaching is down the road, at least if you're coaching high school kids.
Yeah. So now, as we're looking at how we come in and out of this, what do you think the future holds? What kind of changes are going to be made, or should there be any changes made as we get back to hopefully normalcy in the future?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. We've done a lot of talking out here about with our administration about what our school might look differently when we get back to the next normal. But I think athletics too. I think there are a group of people who may rediscover what the purpose of athletics are.
Mm-hmm.
I think the break away from and how much we miss those things. But there are a lot of families and people who it dominates their life totally. And I think they've forgotten about, what's their purpose? What are their kids getting out of this? And I think there are going to be parents who are going to demand more from coaches about teaching my kids the right things and behavior, as opposed to just winning championships. Because as we've told our coaches, I think you can coach kids really hard if you have a great relationship with them and they know
Right.
that you love them and you care about them. I mean, then it's a whole different world than just, transactionally coming in and acting like, well, we're just going to win games. That's all we care about.
And I think you have to be truthful and honest with who they are and who you are. If you can't do that, kids see through everything. If you're a fake person or you're trying to manipulate them, it's not going to work. You have to be above board in what you're doing, even if you're not a great human being. If you're not, that's who you have to be. And of course, you shouldn't have been hired in the first place. But if you come in and we had a coach that came in and completely changed who he was from the summer to the winter. I mean, he was a great guy in the summer. In the winter, once it was time to put everything together, he went bonkers. And he was yelling and screaming, doing push-ups and all that stuff. And he said, I can't get through to these kids. I've been mean. I've been nice. I guess I should grab them by the hand. Like, no, they'll see through that. You've already been a butthead. They know now. So you got to keep being a butthead. I mean, if that's who you are, that's who you are, because they won't respect you at all. They don't respect you now, but they really won't respect you if you go and change who you are.
Well,
And
and
that's a negative part of that, but still.
I think that's the role modeling part of it. Like you said, that people see through fake people. Whether you think you're getting away with something or not, people can see through it. It's the old thing of, do as I say, not as I do. Well, people are watching what we do. They're not really listening to our words. So that's why it's important that we are straight with kids and are honest with them.
And I think they notice, I hope they notice now that we value those relationships. We value the time we put in with them and the time we put in amongst ourselves as administrators, because now they're seeing just how important that is and what we do when they're not in the building every day, and all the changes we're going to have to fight or have fought for the last year.
Right. And I think that's where, athletic administrators and administrators of schools have to be able to convince our community sometimes, like, we want to win and we're going to work our butts off to win. However, it's not the purpose of what we do. There are
Right.
bigger things here we're teaching your kids.
Right. We'd love to play. Don't get me wrong. We don't want to be sitting at home, but it's more important that we do what we're supposed to be doing as opposed to putting you at risk.
Correct. Totally.
Yeah. So when you get to the point of getting back, hopefully soon,
Hmm.
how much, I don't want to call it angst, but how much of that compression, how do you deal with that? Or how do you hope to deal with that? Of
Yeah.
this season starts and the next season starts, the next season starts, and then we've got to go wrap it up and then start the next one.
Well, it's funny you say that. I was talking to a fellow AD in our district yesterday, and then also my athletic assistant. I said, remember that the last 6 months, our lives have slowed down a bit. So
Right.
when things do get crazy, we need to rise to the challenge and look at it as an adventure and not get wore out because, oh, it's so tough and things are going on. Like we've lived a better life, and I've been busy in my own way, but it is different. So I think it's how your attitude is. Like, what is it, a challenge, or is it like, oh, it's going to be awful? It's like, to me, it's going to be a challenge, and there are going to be long days, and we're all going to be wore out. And it's like, you know what? But our kids are playing. If we can keep focused on the right thing, it'll be a lot of fun, even though it's compressed.
It's funny that you put it that way because I remember spending, especially during the winter, we had venues that were close, but again, it's a small school, but they weren't always our venue. So we'd have a building here, a building there, then we have to go to the bank, we have to go do this. And I was in my car so much, but I also was chipping ice and all that stuff in the winter. And I'm like, this is crazy. But then the flip side of that is, and now I'm here doing this in front of a computer screen all day.
Right. What would you rather be doing, right?
I'm not sure. That's the thing. This sounds like a good thing, but it's that stir crazy part of it. It's like, you know what? I didn't mind going out and having to go to venue to venue to venue to venue and doing all this stuff. So I don't
Yeah.
know. It's going to be hard to get back into that swing of things.
There is a certain energy that comes with that, though, like, of doing that, of being busy, and then seeing your kids compete and have a great time and talk to your coaches and help them and do all things. I mean, there's an energy, even though sometimes you're wore out. So that's how we're trying to approach it anyway.
Well, I'll give you a quick story about that. I was coming back from, I was a tennis coach, and the tennis club was in this direction, and then the school was back that way. But in between, there was a place where we were having a swim meet. And I was told that an athletic director hadn't been to a swim meet or to a practice in, like, since they invented water. But it just happened to be on my way, and I just happened to be able to, I'll stop at swim practice. And I walked in the door, and they're like, what's he doing here? I'm just, it's on the way. I thought I'd stop in and see how swim practice went. And it was like, it was a fantastic thing. I really didn't go out of my way to do it. But the fact that I showed up at swim practice, it was like, wow, the athletic director came to see what we're doing. Because there are certain sports that fall through the cracks, unfortunately, and they kind of run themselves.
Hmm.
And I think that, it's like, well, there's the venue, there's the thing, and the pool, and whoever manages that manages the event, so you don't have to do it. And it's nice to get that ability or that time to go, let's check in on them, let's check on these people, and let them know that they're as valued as everybody else. But sometimes we don't have the time to put that effort in, unfortunately.
Right. No, and I think you're exactly right. And that's the one thing when I became the AD as a former basketball coach, and usually, men's basketball is one of your more important
Right.
sports at a school. I purposely out of my way to go to swim meets, go to tennis matches, go out to the golf course and watch our girls and
Hmm.
boys play. And you're right. How appreciative those coaches are. They're like, oh, I haven't seen my AD here, or that no other ADs ever come watch swim
Right.
besides you, right?
Right.
And I'm like, well, that's sad to start with, because if you've
Right.
ever gone to a swim meet, it's super exciting. The
It's
energy is
crazy.
incredible. It's one of the greatest environments in high school sports that nobody knows about.
I stood there and went, is it like this all the time? You guys that are yelling and cheering and screaming, you realize they're underwater. They can't hear you. It didn't matter. They just went crazy. Like, okay. Yeah, so I sat in on a golf match once. It was the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
The athletic directors here at the golf match, and all I did was sit in the cart and drive around for a while, but I saw enough of them play, and I'm like, hey, I know that guy. It's like, yeah, he's the guy that sits in the office most of the day, right? Well,
Right.
no, actually, that's when you see me. It's other times I'm doing stuff. So, and that's the fun of it, I think. I think that we realize, or we're realizing now, as administrators, how much we miss the kids is really the major
Mm-hmm.
thing. And then all the interaction with our coaches, with our parents, and all of that. And I hope that when we get out of this, we'll understand just how important that is, because we get caught up in the day to day.
Right. And that's why I think you make a great point. When we go back, I think your original question, what's the next normal look like? I hope that we have more perspective, and coaches also don't let the little things bug you like they used to. Like, again, remember when we couldn't play for a year? Think
Right.
back to that and go, oh yeah, I get to be with my kids every day now,
Yeah.
right? Like rethink that. And we all have to be reminded of those things, but that's where we plan to go anyway.
And that's the thing where I would always say the paperwork and all that stuff, get it done when it has to be done and forget about it, because that's not what you're here for. That's on me. But if I have to have you sign something or turn something in, please do it so I don't have to keep bothering you about it, because that's not what you're here to do. You're here to interact with the kids and help them become better. And I
Right.
think sometimes we all lose sight of that because I have a deadline here. This has got to be posted there. This has got to be done this way. And I think that with this time, hopefully, we're able to take a step back and go, no, here's the important thing now.
Right. And that's where I think, creating time for your coaches, even though it's not a setup meeting and those types of things. I love when my coaches pop in for 5 or 10 minutes
Yeah,
and interrupt me sometimes, but I'm like,
right.
that's what I'm there for. When they need me, I need to be accessible. It's about the people. It's not about, like you said, make buses have to show up, officials have to show up, and the people are what's important.
I can remember the cross country coach would just kind of like, is it okay to get your butt in here? It's like, well, I don't like, you're more important than this other little bit of stuff. If you have a problem, we have to deal with it. Or if you have something, an issue that you want to discuss, I don't know about it until you tell me. And I
Right.
think that what we run across, and correct me if I'm wrong here, is that sometimes in all of our lives, what we do is we place so much importance on what we think the issues are. And I think this has taught us that the issues are more this way than that way. And I
Right.
think what we do is ask our coaches, hey, what's important? Ask our parents what's important.
Mhm.
So I guess there's a question coming up sometime. Just give me a second, I'll come to it. But the idea being, when we are able to do that, are we able to communicate that with the other administrators we have to deal with? How are you acting as a whole? I know that you're in a district of other schools. Are you able to work together right now? Or is that something like, we're just going to take care of our house, you take care of your house?
Yeah, the good thing about our school district is with the 6 comprehensive high schools, we meet twice a month as ADs for 3 or 4 hours. So we have long meetings. We have a lot of things that we work together on. So we've got those relationships, and even though all of us do the job differently, because there's certain things that jazz us and things that we just tolerate and get done with, our group's pretty good at working together. So we have some of that camaraderie, and for the most part, we're on the same page. And I think we're all, I guess almost all of us are 50 and above. So I think our purpose is different than when you're 25 or 30, back to
Right.
our coaching thing. So I think we have the best interests of our kids and coaches, and try to balance all those things out.
Okay. Now, when we're dealing with facilities, um, any changes on what you want to do with facilities and how you're going to operate down the road?
It's a good question. Besides getting a new gym that my school definitely needs, that I heard might be in the next bond. So I'm sort of excited.
Okay,
I want you
good,
to know
good.
that, which I'll probably not be here to enjoy that. But no, I think, facility wise, and all our schools are different. And, our facilities aren't the best in our district, but we found a way within our coaching staff and our people that we make it work. And I think that's part of the cool thing at our school is our coaches are sort of on the same page. We have a high free and reduced lunch, proportion of kids in our school, but our kids and coaches are so appreciative of what we do, and we figure it out. And really, our coaching staff pulls together. In fact, I had a 7:15 a.m. meeting monthly. We just had it this morning with my head coaches. So we try to stay on the same page and stay connected for kids.
Well, I was thinking about this a few days ago. Had I been doing this now, we would have put on a volleyball event, for example. At that point, I would have had no one to be able to help me. They're usually at the soccer field or something like that. We didn't have a large drawing for a volleyball, especially now when you wouldn't have many people there. But you still would have to sanitize everything and wipe everything down. And I thought, how many more hours would I have to put in for a volleyball match where it used to be turn off the lights, move the bleachers back, and go home?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing that I don't think that even the parents that want us to play don't, and some of them will volunteer to help, which was great. We always had that. But the concept of, okay, if we have multiple venues to deal with and multiple sports to deal with and multiple games and officials and all that, how much is this going to add
Mm-hmm.
to just making sure everything's sanitized?
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and that's where we've talked with our coaches a little bit about that when we hopefully get to start playing games. Like they and their kids are going to need to take on some of that responsibility,
Right.
which I think is huge. There are certain sports, I don't know for you, but wrestling. Those guys and gals now they move mats in and out, and they do all these different things. Volleyball, they set up and they do their things.
Right.
I think it's great for our kids to have cultures like that to start with. So I'm hoping that continues and gets accentuated with cleaning things going forward.
Well, and as we were talking about, we're trying to teach them more than just playing. We're teaching the responsibility of if you want to have the sport, not that we're putting all the onus on them, but if you want to have the sport, this is part of the responsibility of what you're going to have to do.
Mm-hmm. And I think there's pride that comes from that. I mean, feeling good about that you had something to do with making it happen. I think that's a good thing for all of us to be part of.
And I've always learned that from the parents. The parents that showed up to pop popcorn or to we need a volleyball official to be the line judge. They go, I got you, but you came to watch. Well, I'll do it this time. That guy will do it next week. His but they all work in concert together without having to even be organized for it.
Mm-hmm.
So okay, there leads to the next question of how do the parents? Have you had any feedback from the parents on? I know it's a state issue thing, but my kid's losing a season, a senior year. How do you deal with that?
I've been amazed by that question. Let me back up with our coaches first
Okay.
off. Our coaches have been fantastic, and they're not bugging me and prodding me and those types of things going forward. And it's same thing with our parents. I've been amazed. I thought what you're talking about, you're going to get all kinds of phone calls and emails about how do we do this? How come we're not playing and all these different types of things. I've heard from zero angry parents in the last
Really?
10 months, and again, I feel very fortunate. Maybe it's where we are in our clientele and our community, but even other ADs at very different schools. Yeah. They're like, no, the parents are like, they want their kids to play, but they sort of realize we're in hopefully a once in 100-year kind of pandemic that we're going to get through, and we're going to be excited as heck, when we get a chance to actually compete. So the parents have been fantastic, and I need to make sure when this is all done that there's some sort of outpouring to appreciative to the parents about not making my life that difficult either.
Well, we understand that we are coaching and administering their kids. Even though we call them our kids, they're not our kids, they're their kids. And the fact that they're taking ownership of what has to be done is very impressive. And I from various conversations I've had, I've kind of heard the same thing. It's like, well, it's not the greatest situation, but if this is going to be the worst year of your life, you're going to have a pretty good life.
Exactly. If
So
it gets better from here, it's okay, right?
yeah, it's okay. Yeah. Well, and we've said that to a number of groups with kids. Like, hey, if a 7-loss season or a 12-loss season or you don't win a game is going to be the worst thing that you ever come across, and it happened when you were 14 years old, life's going to be pretty good.
Totally agree. That's a great way of looking at it.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time. I appreciate you giving some insight. We'll run this past some other people, so maybe some other people can say, all right, he's calm and cool and collected. Maybe I should be the same way. And hopefully your community is the same way. And hopefully you get the new gym as well.
Well, it'll be here at some point in time. I hope I'm here to enjoy it potentially in the future.
Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it a lot.